So one nice example of the importance of cohesion is something that relates to plants, or specifically trees, really any plant, but trees are probably the best example. If you take a look at a tree and how tall a tree is, you might have wondered at some point is that how does the water get up to the top of the tree? What drives the water up to the top of the tree? And a lot of people just say, well, the roots push the water up, but how do they do that? You know, where does the energy come from? What's the motor or the pump that drives it up? And the answer is not necessarily really intuitive, but it certainly has something to do with cohesion between water molecules. So what happens is plants have vessels called xylem inside of them. They're little tubes that the water is contained in, and these things are full of water. There's no air gaps or dry spaces in them. This is one of the reasons why plants need to have water available to them all the time. So at the top of the plant, at the leaf, there are little openings called stomata, which is not something that's real important for you to memorize right now, but these little openings, like right here, I drew the little opening. The water molecule is able to escape. It's able to evaporate away. And when this water molecule here evaporates away and basically floats away into the air, it's attracted to the water molecule next to it. So if this is water molecule number 1, here's water molecule number 2. Number 2 is attracted to number 1, and as this pulls away, it pulls number 2 up into that position. Guess what? Number 2 pulls number 3, which then pulls number 4, and so on and so on and so on, pulling up all the water molecules below them all the way down to the roots. And this can go up trees that are over 100 or even hundreds of feet tall. Some of the trees in the rainforest are incredibly tall. So the energy for this process to get this water molecule to evaporate and then pull all the other ones up comes from the sun. So it's heat energy from the sun that makes that happen. So there is no, pump down in the roots that causes that. The roots are able to provide some osmotic pressure that pushes the water just so many inches or maybe a foot or two. But then the rest of that energy comes from the sun, and this is something that we call transpiration pull, and the only way that can happen is because of cohesion between water molecules. So this is my diagram, which isn't exactly the most beautiful, but we have a more beautiful diagram here that shows this. So here's a very tall tree with water evaporating here at the top, water molecules escaping the leaves, and then pulling up the other water molecules up the tree all the way down from the ground where it enters at the roots. The key here is that there can't be any gaps in the water. The vessels of the xylem cannot have any air spaces. The water molecules all have to be connected to each other with, what's that called again? That's right, hydrogen bonds connecting each other, causing this cohesion. And here you see the little Mickey Mouse shapes. As this one gets pulled up, it pulls the next one with it, that pulls the next one, etc., etc., etc. Here's just an electron micrograph of those xylem vessels, the little tubes that are in the trunk of the tree. But any plant really has these, even shorter plants. It's just not as impressive. Another example of cohesion, or another result of cohesion, is something that we call surface tension. So at the top of the water molecules all connect to each other and sort of pull together, and they form what could be described as basically a solid surface, because the water molecules are locked into place due to these hydrogen bonds. They're all sort of connected to each other up at the surface, kind of like this. And when they're locked in place, they're not free to move past another very easily, and that's basically the definition of a solid. So the surface of the water really technically is something like sort of a solid sheet at the top of the water. And the surface tension is something that some living organisms take advantage of, like this water strider insect can actually walk on top of the water, and you can see here where the feet push down against the surface, there's an indentation in that solid sheet of water due to those hydrogen bonds. And it's able to actually walk on water and stay dry. Basically the feet don't get wet in this case because they don't penetrate the surface. We can demonstrate this ourselves, not because we can walk on water, that would be nice, but we can't, by floating objects that are denser than water that really theoretically should sink because they're not buoyant, like a piece of steel, like this paper clip right here. You can do it with a staple also. Just simply take a glass of water, fill it to the top, and then gently, very carefully place a paper clip at the top, and you'll see that it actually floats, not because it is less heavy or less dense than water. No, it should sink, but because it's unable to penetrate that solid sheet at the surface that we call surface tension. So you can try this yourself with a glass of water. Just fill it up, get a paper clip or a staple, and check it out for yourself in your own house.